Greetings. Welcome back to Parsing John. We have reached our second section of chapter 1. This one is going to take us from verse number 6 all the way through verse number 12. And I think one of our previous videos I said it was only going to be 3. I took a look after that at the text again, and it looks like the next real paragraph break is actually at verse number 12. As you can see, we've only got through number 10 on this piece of paper. So we're going to have a completely second, not completely second, another piece of paper on to have those two verses, which are almost as big as this text right here. So when we do finally get to the end of this section and we compare the Vulgate to our Greek version, that video is probably going to be pretty long since we'll be covering, 7 verses. Okay, first things first, we've got our Parsing Greek rubric right here. And now you can't quite make all of that out. I had to expand the page a lot for this one. Let's go ahead and read the the first 2 verses. That's as far as we're going to go today. All right. Ageneto anthropos apostolmenos partheu onoma autoi Ioannes. Hutos elthen eis marturion hina marturesei peri tu photos hina pantes pisteu sin diautu. Okay, sorry, stumbling over that. Okay, we always, when we want to translate something from another language into English, want to go and find our verb first. So our verb is what tells us about our subject. And quick reference, this is what we're looking for in all of our Greek words. I want to have something like this on hand for yourselves. Our very first word is, in fact, our verb. And we've seen this one before in our previous text, but since we've got a new section here, we're going to go ahead and parse it again. We have got its eto is our ending, and that makes it a third person, and it's singular based on, the stem of our verb here. Again, we know that this is going to be of the aorist tense, and eto is either a middle or a passive ending for the aorist. And this verb, I don't think I mentioned this in the previous videos when we ran into it. This is actually what is known as a deponent verb. And that's where it is missing the active voice forms, and usually it's going to be the present and everything else, or it has normal present and it's got passive or middle form in the other tenses. And that's more of a Latin thing to do there, but this one starts out as a deponent, so it looks passive or looks middle, and it actually has an active meaning here, though considering what this verb actually means, that sounds kind of weird. It means to become, be born. It doesn't sound active, and that's part of the reason why it's in the passive. You can't have a passive meaning of this verb, if you will. You can't be bead, as some of my students might say. So yeah, this is one of the ones where it being deponent actually makes sense. That's probably about 50% of them. And that's probably me just making a gross generalization. Moving on. So it's going to be either middle or passive. And it is indicative. And since we know he didn't become of himself the subject of the sentence from context, that's not going to be it. So it's going to be passive deponent in form. And it means that there are a couple different options. The most basic common translation of this one, which we used previously, is since it's aorist, became. However, since we're talking of a person, that doesn't quite make as much sense. Some translations use the word was, there was, which is possible, but it's straying a little bit far away from what this verb means and getting more of, linking verb, like what this one would mean. So I'm going to use a lower tier translation of it, and it's going to be, since this is a verb at the beginning of the sentence, it's acting kind of like a linking verb would at the beginning, indicating the existence of something. I'm going to say, there was born. This is a less common meaning of this verb, but it is still more viable than what normally we want to translate this as based on other Bible translations. Okay, so we know we need a singular subject. We go to our next verb. We've got anthropos, and there we have it right there. This is going to be nominative and singular and masculine for our second declension. Then we have man. Don't have an article there, so we'll have to do something special with that in a little bit. Okay, and now we come to this strange thing here. We've got an os ending, which matches anthropos here, so we know it is also nominative and singular and masculine. But then we've got men, and it's on this really long verbal stem. It's not actually a verb, though. What we have here is a participle. And this one is, of course, nominative, singular, masculine, because participles act as adjectives, so they have to match the case number and gender of their noun. But since it is also a verb, it's a verbal adjective, it has to have tense, voice, and mood. And the tense of this one, apestal, and that's going to be, if I remember, yes, perfect. And it is middle or passive in form. And this verb has an active form, and that is apostel. Oh, okay. Apostel, you can barely read that, sorry. But that's its present active form, so it's not deponent like this one was, so it's got to be one or the other of these. It's, in context, is going to tell us middle is not the correct one, so it's got to be passive. And then, of course, its mood is as a participle. And it means, since it's perfect and it's passive, having been, and I'm just going to abbreviate that to HB, and then the basic meaning of the word, sent. And when we get to a final translation of this line, we're just going to drop this out entirely. It's the wonderful thing about perfect passive participles. You don't have to have that part. It works wonderfully. Okay, so there was born man, having been sent para theu. We've got a prepositional phrase right here. Para clearly takes the genitive form here. We've got a genitive singular, and theu we already know is going to be masculine. Okay, and when para takes the genitive, we know it is acting as a genitive agent, so we translate it by God. No article here either. Again, we'll deal with that later. Okay, then we come. Onoma autoi ioannes. Okay, onoma here is clearly the only option for our subject other than Ioannes. This is a first declension masculine. So ace is its nominative form. And onoma is either nominative or accusative. But based on the construction with this dative singular here, we don't have a verb. But when you have a dative, you've got the word name, which is what this one means. And of course, a name in the nominative. Both of these are nominative. What we've actually got going on is either a dative of possession or a dative of reference. It's more of a Latin thing, come to think of it. I don't remember if Greek has a dative of reference. Anyway, so we know that since we've got the dative here, it's name and a actual proper noun. This is going to be nominative, not accusative, and it's singular, and the word is, of course, neuter, onoma, onomatos, and Ioannes is going to be masculine to match anthropos, and it's going to be nominative and singular. Okay, and this would be to him because auto refers back to anthropos as well, so that's going to be masculine. And then this is what the word from which we get John. And they really don't look that much alike. It should be Joanne. Yeah, weird. Anyway, there we go. So we've got our first verse done. We can go back to the beginning and we can go ahead and address the peculiarities, not the peculiarities, our controversy, if you will. So we have two different ways we can translate this based on whether or not we're doing the Trinitarian translation, triangle, or the non-Trinitarian, the polytheist translation, poly. Okay, so we've got no articles, and we're talking about definite persons or something like that. We have option number 1, the Trinitarian way of translating this. And this is just for example. This is not necessarily actually how we would translate it. There was born a man, or there was born man. If we treat this as we treated the article-less word back in verse number 2, in the Trinitarian way, we would say, there was born man, sent by God. His name, or name to him, John. And we would insert, for the sake of English, the word was. Now, the polytheist way, for reference to our previous verse, would be, there was born a man, having been sent by a God. A name to him was John. Okay, so there's no problem here doing an indefinite article. It actually makes better sense right here. There was born a man, a general man, not just the man, the only man. But right here, unless verse 2 should be translated in the polytheistic way, doesn't make sense. So we should say, there was born a man sent by God. Sent by a God, only if polytheist is correct. Otherwise, we want to leave the indefinite article out of this. So I'm going to pencil in over here a, but not over here. I'm going to leave that as. Again, I side with the theists, not with this group. So there's my bias. We see 2 more examples here for reference. Let's move on to verse number 7. We've got quite a ways to go, and it's already been about 10 minutes. All right, so first things first, we've got a demonstrative. It's not our verb, so we're going to ignore it right now. Eilthin here is our verb, and as we take a look at this, we see that it is the aorist tense of ercome, I want to say? Yeah, aorist, and N is a third person, and it's singular. This is active, and it is indicative. Okay, and this would mean he came. Why he? So we look back here, we've got os, our nominative, singular, masculine form of this demonstrative, which we've seen before. So this one came, and we've got a prepositional phrase. And this is where we get something interesting. Normally this means into when it takes the accusative, as we clearly got right here, so plus accusative. And we would say, this one came into witness. However, in Greek, ace can also be used to show purpose. And that's exactly what we have going on here. Witness is not a location anywhere on the map that I'm aware of, but since we don't have that, this one is clearly indicating that we've got a purpose. We could say to be, as, something along those lines. For, I think, is the most common way of translating ace when it's indicating purpose. For witness. And then we've got hina here, and hina indicates that we've got a subjunctive phrase coming along here. And as we take a look ahead, we've got martorese. A is a subjunctive ending, and it is the third person, and it is singular. And the tense for this one is also going to be aorist, and it is active. And it means, well, he witnesses. And this one we're going to translate, since we've got ina plus purpose clause, not purpose clause, plus subjunctive, indicates that this is going to be a purpose clause matching with this. So I'm going to say purpose here. Terrible R. That, or in order to witness. For the sake of flow, we're going to go with in order to. Okay, we've got a prepositional phrase, so we don't need to repeat our subject. Peri tu, we've got an article connecting with photos. Photos is a third declension, and we already know from previously that it is a neuter, and it's going to be genitive because of tu, and it is singular, so peri here is taking the genitive. ends there because we've got a comma and a new hina. When peri takes the genitive, it means about. Okay, about the light. Comma. All right, hina again. Draw a line. In order that, and then we find our verb. We've got an omega here with our ending, which means either we have two vowels that have collapsed in on each other because one is part of the stem and one is part of the ending, or we've actually got a subjunctive form. And since we know that hina wants another subjunctive here, it makes most sense for this to be a third person plural subjunctive. And as we take a look at the form, pisteus, we know that future can't have subjunctive, so this has got to be either imperfect or aorist, and it's going to fit best with aorist because the imperfect would not have that sigma there. Aorist, and it's again active, and of course subjunctive. Okay, and this word would be, they believe. Okay, who's they? Well, we know we need a plural subject. Die autu as a prepositional phrase. There's going to be alpha that'll lie in there in all likelihood. This clearly takes the genitive. Come back to that. Pantes. Here we go. We've got, what is the form? Pasapan. Paspasapan. That's what it is. So pantes here, that is going to be a nominative or accusative plural ending. And since we need a plural subject, it makes most sense for it to be nominative, and it's going to be plural. And the default is masculine. Feminine, I can't remember what the feminine nominative plural is, but anyway, it's not going to be that one. So all, okay, in order that all believe die autu. Die, when it takes the genitive, it means through. And what is autu referring back to? Well, in all likelihood, is going to refer back to photos. And who is the photos? What is photos? Well, you'd have to refer back to verse 5, where we learned that the light is the word of God, so on and so forth. So we want to say, we can say it or him based on context of the previous verses that we don't have visible here now. Him, I think, is going to make the best sense. So we've gone through, we've parsed everything, we've got it already. We can go back through and put it all together. We've already looked at the options up here. That's what we want to keep. No article there. So we've got, this one came for a witness in order to witness about the light, in order that all believe through him. And there we go. It's a very rough translation. There's certainly a lot more that we could do to make it sound better in English, but it's quite sufficient for our purposes. In our next video, we're going to take a look at these same two verses from the Vulgate, parse them, get a rough translation of them, ultimately building for when we finish verse 12 in both of them, compare the two texts together and see, again, how well the Vulgate matches up against the Greek. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope to see you in our next video. Have a good day.